Hey friends, welcome back to another video, and in this one we're going to be talking about fixed node trees within the color page of Davinci Resolve. Now, fixed node trees are a great way to improve the consistency and efficiency of your color grades, and we're just going to be diving in, having a bit of a casual conversation about fixed node trees and how I utilize them within my workflow. And you can also download my fixed node tree that we're going to look at in this video to follow along yourself. The link will be in the video description below. So why don't we just jump in? We're going to take a look at these 5 clips. You may have seen them before. They're just downloaded straight off ArtGrid. And if we jump over into the color page, this is essentially a starting point for any color grade. Obviously, we have our 5 clips just here. And one thing to note is we are working in a color managed workspace. So if we go to the color management settings here, you can see Davinci YRGB color managed. And if you just want to take a quick screenshot of this, these are all the settings I'm using. We're essentially working in a input color space of Davinci or Blackmagic Design Film Gen 5. That is being moved into the timeline or working color space of Davinci Wide Gamma Intermediate. And then our output will be Rec 709 Gamma 2.4. I am monitoring everything here on the Flanders DM240. This is a calibrated reference monitor, but you can see here on the left hand side, and you can see on the left hand screen here is the graphical user interface or the GUI monitor of Davinci. So those are my color management settings. The final setting I always change down here is the 3D lookup table. Change that to tetrahedral. Sometimes it's on trilinear, and we'll go ahead and hit save. So right off the bat, you can see here I've got a whole series of nodes here. I'm just going to delete that and completely reset all grades by right clicking and hit reset all grades, and then I can go ahead and select all the rest of the clips and copy that node tree over. So now we are starting afresh. We are in a color managed workspace, which essentially what that means is it's converted it from the raw state of the footage into a Rec 709 viewable color space as we're grading, but we're grading within a Davinci Wide Gamut working color space, which is important because if we're using any LUTs, any color space transforms, any type of color space specific tools, then we need to be aware that we're working inside a Davinci Wide Gamut Intermediate space. So now let's say we have 100 clips here. All I'm going to do to start is to apply a fixed node tree to one clip, and I'm just going to use this sample fixed node tree. I've been using this particular one for a long time, and it works for me in my workflow. There's no right or wrong way of building a fixed node tree, but essentially the concept behind a fixed node tree is that it's fixed. It's a preset or a predefined number of nodes that you apply to every single clip within your project, and each node is the exact same node in every single clip. For example, if we have node 4 here as exposure, a fixed node tree will essentially determine that on every single clip, no matter where you are in the entire project, node 4 will always be exposure no matter what you're doing. So what we can do is once we've built out our fixed node tree, I can then select all of the other clips within my project and then copy that node tree over. So now I have 5 clips, and you can see I can cycle through all of the nodes, and the nodes are laid out in a really logical consecutive nature from 1 all the way through to 26, and then I can cycle through my clips, and every clip has that same node tree. If I move over to node 5, which is my ratio node, I can then cycle through all the clips. You can see the ratio node is always selected no matter what clip I'm working on. Now this is the power of fixed node trees. Because everything is consistent, I can really quickly jump through my clips and navigate through my nodes, and I've got control over what adjustments are being made on what node. There are a couple of settings that we need to select just to make sure that the functionality of the nodes are the same as how I'm using them. So over in the top right hand corner here, we can click switching clip selects and just make sure same node is checked. This essentially means if we are on our exposure node on this clip, when we move to the previous clip, the same node is selected, in this case exposure node number 4. So there we have our fixed node tree applied to every clip within our film or commercial or documentary. In this case, obviously we're just using 5 clips, but this could be 100 clips, 1,000 clips. Every single clip has been brought into Davinci Wide Gamut as a working color space, and every single clip has the same node structure applied to it before I have done any adjustments to the project. Now, the great thing about a fixed node tree is that you can have a whole range of preset tools applied in a cold state to the node, so they're not actually affecting the image from the start. What I mean by this is if we deselect everything and bypass this, we can actually disable every node. There's no changes actually being applied to the image. But if we look at node 13, I've actually already got a soft vignette already applied as a power window. And if we go here, you can see that power window has already been applied. And so if I cycle to this node, all I have to do is hit offset and just drop my offset down, and I've already got a soft vignette ready to go if I need it. I don't always use it for every single clip, but the point of a fixed node tree is to give you the ability to jump into nodes really quick, make adjustments without having to grab your pen if you don't have a panel and, grab a power window, apply it, tweak it. So the point is efficiency and speed. Now, if I reset that, you can see I've also got a slightly different edge power window, and I've got a range of different power windows ready to go. As another example, if you really wanted to, let's go to node 23. I'm going to pull up my effects and just type in film convert. If I drop that in there, you can see it's made a whole range of adjustments, but if I move the chroma and luma down and take the grain strength and the grain size down, you can now see that this adjustment, if I bypass it, is actually doing nothing to the image. So if you are using grain or film convert a lot within your node tree or your fixed node tree, you could keep it in there, and as you can see, it's actually not doing anything to the image, but it's already there plugged in to that node for you to go in and quickly make adjustments if you need. All this does is save a few seconds having to bring up the effects menu and type in film convert, dragging and dropping it onto a node. It just saves a little bit of time, and it's really helpful and efficient. So let's have a look at the logic of this fixed node tree, and I'll run you through every single node and talk about how I like to color grade. This isn't a fixed node tree for absolutely every project. It will grow or contract depending on the particular project. Now, I've designed these fixed node trees really to do the base and secondary adjustments underneath a look, and generally I apply the look on a timeline level or a post group clip level. What this basically means is if I select these 5 clips, right click and add them into a new group, I'm just going to call this footage for now. These have now been applied to a new group. If you ever want to see where the groups are at, you can bring up your lightbox view and you can go ahead and click this icon down on the left hand side, and you can see the different groups that you have set up. So in this case, footage has all of these clips inside it. Now, every single clip on this group has an additional dot, which you can see here. And now I can go ahead and add a post group clip adjustment, and I can start to build my creative look here post group. For example, if I just add a lot of contrast and then throw this color way off, you can see that that has applied it to all of these clips. If I disable this node on the first clip, it has disabled it on every single clip. And that's because with every clip, all of the adjustments go through all of the initial nodes in the fixed node tree, and then it gets piped into the look adjustment, which is here, and then it goes into the timeline. If it's a really simple project that's been shot only on one camera and it's not using a bunch of additional source material such as archive material or multiple formats, then you'd be safe to just do your look adjustment in the timeline. However, in this case, I'm just going to create a really basic look here in the group post clip. To illustrate this at a really high level, I'm just going to use some LUTs from Cullen Kelly's Voyager Pro Pack. This LUT is creating contrast to the image. It's just giving it a nice filmic contrast curve. I'm going to introduce some color shifts with this Venus LUT. And then finally, I'll just introduce a split tone, which is given the highlights a bit more of a creamy look, and then definitely introduce blue into the shadows. So really quickly, this is before, let's go full screen, and this is after a quick look. Now, what we can do is go into the clip and actually start now working in our fixed node tree. Because I've applied the look at a post group clip level, I can really just dive in and finesse some really simple things such as exposure, ratio, which is contrast, white balance, and saturation, to bring all of these clips in to the same world. And that is the logic of my fixed node tree with this first line. So the first line is very much your base level adjustments to balance all of your shots together. From left to right, starting with number 1, this is noise reduction. Noise reduction I generally apply after I've done pretty much my whole color grade, because oftentimes, depending on how you crush the shadows or roll the shadows off and drop the exposure of the image, it might actually absorb a lot of that noise. And so if you're applying noise reduction at the beginning of your grade without a strong contrast curve and exposure adjustment, you might be applying it in a way that's too heavy or isn't actually needed. So I apply that at the end, so we're not going to do anything here. The next node is texture. Oftentimes shots vary in texture or contrast or sharpness. Footage might be shot with a Pro Mist type filter on it with a lot of halation and glow. Others might be really sharp and quite clinical, quite digital. So texture is a node where I can finesse the texture of the clips to try and match them together. Node number 3 is highlight control. If I ever need to control my highlights and just roll them off so that they're not clipping and distracting. I have experimented with highlight control pre and post exposure. I find controlling highlight in the raw state just to compress the dynamic range earlier just has a more organic look to it. So the next node is exposure, and you can adjust exposure in many different ways. You could use your offset just like this. You could also use a linear gamma adjustment. So right click, gamma, go to linear, and then you can use your gain wheel to give it a really nice photographic type exposure where it anchors the blacks a little bit more. You could also just use your lift, gamma, and gain. You could use a range of different things, custom curves, but I like to keep it all simple and all controllable by my panel. And so I tend to default to that linear gain method or just exposure. The next node, number 5, is ratio. Now this is contrast. Sometimes shots need a bit more contrast depending on how they were shot. If I'm using this shot as an example for my hero image, I'll just grab a still here. And if we go over to this shot, for example, and play this still, you can see how these are completely different. Now, if I was to match this, I could go to my exposure and try and initially get a exposure match. And you can see I'm using my lift, gamma, and gain wheels to do this. And while I'm doing that, I'm actually naturally increasing the contrast of the image. Oftentimes I used to do this in exposure as well as using my exposure adjustments. But what I've done is I'm going to reset that and actually move it into my ratio node. So my ratio node is specifically just contrast, adding contrast or decreasing contrast. And then my exposure node is free to purely just adjust the exposure. My ratio node is just contrast. So the next node is white balance. Now white balance can be adjusted in a range of different ways. I tend to only use offset to do more of a classical printer light adjustment. I could use printer lights. I've got printer lights set up on my Stream Deck, but offset does the exact same thing. And if I was to try and match it to this example, would be somewhere in that world. Saturation finally is self-explanatory. There are obviously a range of different ways you can increase and decrease saturation, but essentially those are the base level adjustments. I'll go through and adjust those for every single shot just to make sure that they're all matching. Obviously these aren't matching, but I will adjust all of these to match before I then go on to my secondary level adjustments, which are from node 8 down to 19. 8 to 11 are where I can add a whole range of hue versus adjustments. Maybe there are some specific colors that I want to shift within the image. Maybe there are some actual fixes that I need to do, such as face refinement. That is all done between 8, 9, 10, and 11. Then I move into the windowing or relighting. So as I mentioned before, there are a range of presets already in here in terms of my power windows, and 12 and 13 are general vignettes. 14 is just another power window, and 15 is the outside of the power window. What I mean by that is if we look at this window, you can see this is adjusting the outside, and then if I move into the next window, this is adjusting the inside of that same power window. So then 16, 17, 18, and 19 is just 2 more sets of the in and out power windows to use if I need to. So I've just got a simple circle set there, and then this one's left open in case you want to do a custom or, for example, a gradient, something like this. However you like to do it, it's up to you, but those are a bunch of presets that I tend to use all the time when I'm grading, and so I like to just have them ready to go. Now, the final line, 20, 21, 22, and 23, is generally my look development, and this, in this case, is actually done in my post group clip. So if I was using this fixed node tree for this particular shot, I would actually delete that, and now I'm left with a simpler fixed node tree. When I do my look, generally there's a contrast curve base, which is this here, and then the look nodes would be some kind of creative treatment, some split toning, all of that good stuff. And then if there's grain, you could apply it here at the end of your node tree, such as the final node here. Or some people actually like to build grain into the texture element of the color grade. If you're doing textural work and grain work there, it's generally because you're trying to emulate the workflow process if you were actually to film and shoot on film stock. If you're shooting on film stock, obviously the grain is baked into the film stock initially, and so the grain is present in the actual color grade. Finally, the last thing in my fixed node tree is I have a second stream of inputs solely to pull qualifications if I need it. Every now and then I need to pull a qualification to isolate either a particular color, a particular luminance range, or the most common situation is obviously skin tones. And so if I need to pull a qualification, let's say we're trying to isolate that blanket there, I can go ahead and actually go to my first node, which is key base, and increase the contrast, saturation, and white balance of the image to create maximum color separation for the qualification that I'm about to initiate. Because I want to get the best starting point possible before I pull my qualification. So that's before and that's after. If you take a look in here, this is before and after. You can now see that I've got a better starting point. Now I'm going to go ahead and simply pull a hue qualification. So I have my qualification of the blanket, and now what I can do is actually take the alpha channel from that qualification and pipe that in anywhere I want to any of these secondary node adjustments. So now if we go back into our color graded image, I now have a clean selection of that blanket to do whatever I want to. For example, if I want to just shift it just with my offset and just pull it down a touch, you can see I've done that. But the beauty of this style of qualifying is that it's not affected by anything I'm doing up here. An extreme example would be to completely desaturate this blanket. Now, what I can do is if I increase the warmth of the white balance, let's say we pull this in a completely stupid way, just for example, you can see that that qualification is still very much holding up, no matter what I'm doing in my primary adjustments. So this is a really powerful way to create qualifications that don't break if you have to go back and tweak the exposure ratio, white balance, or saturation of your image. You can obviously have a range of different parallel nodes with different qualifications that you can pipe in anywhere you want within your workflow. So that's basically just a summary of my fixed node tree, how I like to work, and how I like to structure my color grades. Just to summarize, A fixed node tree will help you be more efficient, and it will help you keep track of where everything is within your color grades. If you've got 1,000 clips and every single shot has a different node structure and a different, logic of how you're grading, it's going to be really hard to create consistent results, but also it's going to be hard to be efficient, particularly if a client is sitting in sort of asking you questions and wanting to tweak really specific aspects of the image. I've found a fixed node tree helps me stay in control of my color grades, and particularly if you're using a look development at a group post clip level or a timeline level, it creates a really consistent look all the way through your color grade. I hope that's helped you in some way. Just remember, you can download this fixed node tree in the link to this video, and I would love to hear how you're using it. And if you do have any questions about color grading, particularly with a fixed node tree, please drop them in the line below and I'll be sure to answer them. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you in the next one.